The designation came through official Conclave channels during a routine administrative session. High Warden North reviewed the classification proposal submitted by the Galactic Species Assessment Commission and approved it with minimal deliberation. The proposal was straightforward. Earth had demonstrated certain characteristics that suggested humanity should be classified as a neutral race, a species with no inherent alignment toward conflict or cooperation, capable of operating independently but without the capacity or inclination to dominate others. The classification came with a specific mark, a symbol that would be registered in the Galactic Registry, visible to every species that accessed human data. The mark indicated that humanity was neither ally nor enemy to the broader galactic community. It indicated that humanity could be ignored, overlooked, or approached without concern for forming significant political alliances. It indicated that humanity was irrelevant. The official documentation stated, Earth species, human, designated as neutral race, classification 7 alpha. Political tendency, passive. Economic significance, minimal. Military capability, non-threatening. Diplomatic influence, limited. Recommended approach, observation without engagement. No resources to be allocated for protection or exploitation. The mark was assigned. The registry was updated. The notation was disseminated across the galaxy. And the Conclave moved on to other matters that seemed more significant. No one understood, at that moment, that the mark they had just assigned would become the most catastrophic error in galactic administrative history. No one recognized that classifying humanity as neutral had set in motion a series of events that would transform the entire balance of galactic power. No one anticipated that the very irrelevance assigned to humanity would become the source of humanity's greatest opportunity. The interpretation in the upper levels of Earth's governmental structure, the neutral designation, was received with mixed reactions. Some officials interpreted it as diplomatic failure. Humanity had asked for full member status in the Conclave, for recognition as a significant galactic power, for inclusion in the decision-making processes that governed galactic civilization. They had instead been marked as irrelevant. But others recognized something different in the mark. Commander Alexandra Park, the highest-ranking military official in human space, saw the neutral designation as an opportunity. "They're ignoring us," Park said during a classified briefing to Earth's highest leadership. "The Conclave has decided that humanity is not significant enough to warrant attention. That means we have freedom to act without scrutiny. We have space to develop without observation. We have the ability to move without constraint." "Freedom to do what?" asked Council Member Zhao, the civilian representative. Park smiled slightly. It was not a comfortable expression. "Freedom to become significant enough that the neutral mark becomes meaningless," she replied. "Freedom to develop capabilities that the Conclave doesn't know about. Freedom to prepare for a galactic role that doesn't require Conclave approval." The council members looked at each other uncertainly. "You're talking about building military capability in secret," Council Member Okoye observed. "I'm talking about exactly that," Park confirmed. "The Conclave has marked us as neutral. Neutral means they're not paying attention. Neutral means we can develop whatever we want without triggering Conclave investigation. Neutral means we have the freedom to become something far more significant than the mark suggests." The hidden development over the course of the next 30 years, humanity underwent a transformation that no galactic observer noticed. Using the freedom granted by the neutral designation, humanity began developing military technologies at an accelerated pace. They developed weapons systems based on theoretical frameworks that most species assumed were impossible. They created propulsion systems that exceeded known efficiency standards. They designed tactical doctrines that combined elements from dozens of different military traditions across the galaxy. And they did it all in complete secrecy. The neutral mark protected them. Because the Conclave had determined that humanity was not significant, the Conclave did not monitor human development closely. The minor increases in energy consumption in human space were attributed to economic growth. The occasional unusual sensor readings were dismissed as equipment malfunction. The subtle changes in human space traffic patterns were noted but not analyzed. Humanity was beneath the Conclave's attention. And that inattention became humanity's most valuable asset. 30 years after the neutral mark was assigned, humanity possessed military capability that exceeded every non-conclave power in the galaxy. 30 years after being marked as irrelevant, humanity had become one of the most militarily significant civilizations in known space. And no one in the broader galaxy knew it. The first signal the war that changed everything began as a minor territorial dispute between two coalition powers in a region of space distant from Earth. The Dven Empire, expanding their territory, had encroached on Sauriath collective holdings. The Sauriath, defending their territory, had launched a military response. Within weeks, the conflict had escalated into a full-scale war involving hundreds of capital ships and millions of soldiers. The Conclave, bound by its doctrine of non-interference in disputes between equally powerful species, maintained formal neutrality. Individual Conclave members provided covert support to their preferred sides, but the official Conclave position was one of careful observation. The conflict raged for 9 months. The destruction was immense. Entire star systems were devastated. Billions died. And then a new force entered the conflict. A human fleet emerged at the edge of the war zone. Not a small fleet. Not a token force. An armada numbering 847 capital ships, equipped with weapons systems that neither the Dven nor the Sauriath had ever encountered. The appearance of the human fleet shocked both sides. The Dven and Sauriath were forced to confront a reality that the Conclave had not informed them of: humanity was far more militarily advanced than anyone had suspected. Commander Park, who was directing the human fleet personally, transmitted a message to both combatants: the Dven Empire and the Sauriath Collective are ordered to cease hostilities immediately. Any further military action will result in intervention by the Earth Defense Force. You have 6 hours to agree to a ceasefire. After that, we will enforce the ceasefire using military force. The ultimatum was delivered with absolute certainty. The shocked Dven and Sauriath commanders could not believe what they were observing. The human fleet that had just emerged possessed weapons systems that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. The ship designs were fundamentally different from any military architecture the Dven or Sauriath had studied. The energy signatures indicated propulsion systems that should have been theoretically impossible. Humanity, marked by the Conclave as a neutral, irrelevant species, had revealed itself as militarily dominant. The Dven commander made contact with the Conclave immediately. "High Warden North," he transmitted. "The humans have revealed military capabilities that appear to exceed Conclave capabilities. This was not disclosed in the species registry. We require immediate explanation." Orth's response came back with barely concealed frustration. "We are investigating the human situation immediately." The neutral designation did not include provisions for hidden military development. Humanity has violated their classification parameters. But even as Orth issued the statement, both he and the Dven commander understood the truth: the Conclave's classification system had failed. Humanity had used the neutral designation not as a constraint, but as a shield. They had hidden their development behind a mark that suggested they were irrelevant. And they had emerged militarily significant. The ceasefire was accepted. The Dven and Sauriath stood down their forces. And the galactic community was forced to confront a new reality. The Conclave's investigation into humanity's hidden military development revealed something that Orth found deeply troubling. Humanity had not violated any explicit agreements. They had not broken any formal treaties. They had simply operated within the freedom granted by the neutral designation. The Conclave had classified them as irrelevant, and humanity had used that irrelevance to develop capabilities that exceeded the expectations of every assessment. The Galactic Species Assessment Commission, facing criticism for their misclassification, made a report to the Conclave Assembly: the human species appears to have misinterpreted the neutral designation as permission for unrestricted military development. We did not explicitly forbid weapons development in the neutral classification. We assumed that species classified as neutral would maintain limited military capabilities appropriate to their assessed non-threatening status. You assumed, Orth said, his voice carrying contempt. You made assumptions about how humanity would interpret a designation that essentially told them the Conclave was not paying attention. And in making those assumptions, you failed in your fundamental duty to monitor galactic power distribution. The Commission had no defense. What had been considered a routine administrative action, the neutral designation of a minor species, had turned out to be the greatest intelligence failure in Conclave history. Humanity, hidden behind the mark of irrelevance, had become the most militarily significant power in the galaxy. The Revelation Commander Park was summoned to the Conclave Assembly to face questioning about humanity's hidden military development. She arrived not with deference, but with confidence. Humanity no longer had to hide. The neutral mark, which had protected their development, had served its purpose. The Conclave marked Earth as a neutral race, Park began, her voice clear and unrepentant. You assigned us a mark that indicated we were politically irrelevant, economically insignificant, and militarily non-threatening. You indicated that we did not warrant Conclave resources or attention. She paused, looking around the assembled species. We interpreted that mark precisely as the Conclave intended it, as an indication that we were beneath your attention. We used that freedom to develop our civilization according to our own preferences. We developed the military capabilities that we deemed necessary for our security. We prepared for a galactic role that we understood we would eventually need to play. Orth stood to respond. You violated the spirit of the neutral designation. You were meant to remain non-aligned and non-threatening. We remained non-aligned, Park replied. We have not formed military alliances with any other species. We have not engaged in any conflicts except those initiated by others who tested our resolve. We have not sought to dominate or conquer other civilizations. We have simply prepared for the reality that a species lacking military capability cannot survive long in a galaxy where military capability determines survival. She leaned forward. The Conclave marked us as neutral. That mark was accurate. We are neutral. We have no inherent preference for any species or faction. We are interested in one thing only, ensuring that humanity survives and prospers in a galaxy where military power determines political influence. The new reality within days of Park's address to the Conclave, the galactic political structure began to reorganize around humanity's newly revealed military capability. Species that had previously ignored Earth suddenly began requesting diplomatic engagement. Powers that had dismissed human concerns as insignificant now sought to understand humanity's political objectives. The neutral mark, which had been meant to indicate irrelevance, had become a symbol of concealment. Every species in the galaxy began questioning, what else have we failed to notice? What other species might be hiding military capabilities behind neutral designations or other low-profile classifications? The answer was both enlightening and terrifying. The Conclave's surveillance and assessment systems, which had been believed to be comprehensive, were revealed as having massive blind spots. Species that operated quietly, that didn't demand attention, that didn't pursue obvious military expansion, those species might possess capabilities that the Conclave had completely failed to assess. The galaxy entered a period of uncertainty. Trust in the Conclave's intelligence systems collapsed. Species began questioning whether other species' official military declarations were accurate. Some began developing hidden military forces of their own. The neutral mark that the Conclave had so casually assigned to humanity had triggered a cascade of consequences that destabilized the entire galactic order. The recognition High Warden North, faced with the magnitude of the failure, made a difficult decision. He called for a reformation of the Conclave's species classification system. The neutral designation, which had been intended as a method of identifying minor species that required no attention, was abolished. More rigorous assessment protocols were implemented. Species that operated quietly would no longer be ignored. The assumption that irrelevance indicated insignificance was abandoned. Humanity, meanwhile, was offered something unprecedented, co-governance status with the Conclave. Park accepted on behalf of Earth. Humanity will participate in Conclave governance, she stated formally. We will contribute to the maintenance of galactic peace and stability. We will share our military expertise with the broader galactic community. And we will ensure that the mistake of marking a civilization as irrelevant is never repeated. The Conclave agreed. What had begun as administrative negligence, the neutral mark assigned because humanity seemed insignificant, had ended with humanity becoming one of the most powerful entities in galactic governance. The irony revealed years after humanity's military emergence, a historical analyst was reviewing the original neutral designation and made a discovery that illuminated the full irony of what had occurred. The neutral mark had not been created by accident. It had been deliberately designed by members of the Conclave Assessment Commission who believed that humanity should be discouraged from seeking greater prominence in galactic affairs. The mark was meant to be subtly demoralizing, a way of telling humanity that they were not significant enough to warrant Conclave attention. In other words, the Conclave had inadvertently created the perfect environment for humanity's secret development. The mark that was meant to diminish humanity had instead liberated them. The classification that was meant to discourage ambition had instead enabled unprecedented preparation. The system designed to keep humanity irrelevant had instead allowed humanity to become the most significant power the galaxy had ever encountered. The broader implications: the revelation of humanity's hidden military capability had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate political situation. The species that had accepted low-profile status in galactic affairs suddenly understood the power of invisibility. The civilizations that had been overlooked by the Conclave recognized that irrelevance could be weaponized. More significantly, every species in the galaxy was forced to confront the question, what have we been missing? What other civilizations might be quietly developing capabilities beyond what the Conclave has assessed? The answer was sobering. Within 2 decades, the Conclave had become aware of 17 other species with hidden military capabilities. The Valorians had developed a fleet in secret. The Sauriath had created weapons systems that exceeded official declarations. The Coalition had accumulated resources and technology far beyond what the Conclave believed they possessed. The galactic order that had been stable for centuries, based on the Conclave's comprehensive understanding of each species' capabilities, had been revealed as fundamentally unstable. It was built on assumptions that were demonstrably false. And those false assumptions had been exposed by a species that the Conclave had literally marked as irrelevant. The Personal Reflection Commander Park, now serving as Earth's primary representative in the Conclave governance structure, was asked by a journalist whether humanity had deliberately misled the Conclave about their intentions. "The Conclave marked us as neutral," Park replied carefully. "They assigned us a mark that indicated we were beneath their attention. They made it clear that they were not monitoring our development." Given that situation, what would you have humanity done? Openly build military capability while the Conclave watched? Announce our technological advances while the broader galactic community dismissed us as irrelevant? The journalist pressed further. Did you plan this? Did you deliberately exploit the neutral designation to hide your military development? Park considered the question for a long moment. "We recognized an opportunity," she said finally. "The Conclave gave us a gift, they stopped paying attention. We used that gift to ensure our species' survival. Whether that constitutes deliberately exploiting the system or simply being pragmatic about the situation, I leave for others to judge." The warning ORTH issued High Warden North, in his final address to the Conclave Assembly, warned against the dangers of complacency in galactic assessment. "We marked humanity as neutral," Orth began. "That mark was meant to indicate that they were not significant enough to warrant our attention. We were wrong. Not because humanity suddenly became significant, but because we fundamentally misunderstood what insignificance meant." He paused. "We assumed that species marked as neutral would remain weak, that they would be incapable of developing significant military capability. We assumed that the Conclave's surveillance systems were comprehensive enough to detect any meaningful military development. We assumed that our understanding of galactic power distribution was accurate." Orth looked around the assembly. All of those assumptions were false. Humanity was not weak, they were simply quiet. The Conclave's surveillance systems had massive blind spots. Our understanding of power distribution was fundamentally incomplete. His final words carried weight. The mistake we made was not in marking humanity as neutral. The mistake was in assuming that neutral meant insignificant. The mistake was in allowing assumptions to replace observation. The mistake was in believing that the Conclave's understanding of the galaxy was complete. The galactic transformation, the revelation that humanity had been secretly developing military capability for 30 years while marked as neutral, transformed how the galaxy understood power. The Conclave's classification system, which had been believed to be comprehensive, was replaced with more rigorous assessment protocols. Species that were classified as having low military capability were now monitored more carefully. The assumption that official military declarations were accurate was abandoned in favor of more skeptical analysis. More significantly, every major species in the galaxy began developing more sophisticated intelligence systems to detect hidden capabilities. The age of transparent military development was over. The age of hidden forces and secret preparation had begun. The neutral mark that had been assigned to humanity had inadvertently revealed a fundamental weakness in the Conclave's understanding of galactic politics. Species could hide their true capabilities for decades. And in hiding those capabilities, they could fundamentally reshape the balance of galactic power. The unexpected consequence. Years after humanity's emergence, another unexpected consequence manifested. Species began deliberately seeking neutral or low-profile classifications, hoping to gain the same freedom from conclave observation that humanity had enjoyed. The Dven Empire attempted to lower their official military assessment, hoping to reduce conclave scrutiny and gain freedom to develop weapons technology. The Sorioth Collective requested reclassification as a non-aligned species, hoping to operate without the constraints of their political alliances. The system that had been designed to provide order through clear classification was destabilized by the very classification that had created humanity's opportunity. The Conclave was forced to revise the classification system yet again, tightening assessment protocols and reducing the possibility that species could hide their true capabilities behind official designations. But the damage was done. The trust that had held the galactic order together for centuries had been fundamentally damaged by the revelation that a species marked as neutral could hide the greatest military capability the galaxy had ever seen. The epilogue, the mark's legacy. Centuries after the neutral designation had been assigned to Earth, historians looked back on it as the pivotal moment that transformed galactic civilization. The mark that had been meant to indicate irrelevance had instead become the symbol of the greatest strategic opportunity a species could receive. The neutral designation that had been designed to isolate humanity politically had instead enabled humanity's military development. The classification that was intended to diminish human significance had instead liberated humanity to become the most significant power in galactic history. The irony was profound and complete. And it served as a permanent reminder that assumptions about insignificance are dangerous. That silence can conceal power. That being overlooked can be the greatest advantage a civilization can possess. The neutral mark that the Conclave had so casually assigned to Earth had turned out to be not a constraint or an insult, but the greatest mistake in galactic administrative history. And that mistake had been made not through malice or ignorance, but through the simple human error of believing that irrelevance was actually irrelevance. When in fact, irrelevance was simply an opportunity waiting to be exploited.